everyone, welcome to my second video where I'm going to be teaching you guys how to render. So you might be wondering why I have this ball in front of you. It's because I'm going to first teach you guys how to blend, which leads me to how to properly blend. But when you're rendering, you want to make sure that you're avoiding smudging. I'm going to show you guys how to avoid smudging. So first, as you can see, you're going to identify your highlights, your midtones, your shadows, and of course your reflected light. There's more that you can add, but you just want to restrict yourself to this. And I'm going to show you guys the incorrect side and the right side. And I'm showing you this because this same principle applies when drawing the face. You want to make sure that you're actually identifying its main colors. So when starting off, you just want to place down the colors exactly as you see it on the reference. I showed this on my last video and I actually explained how to draw the face properly. And you always start with large blocky shapes. And the same thing applies to this ball. As you can see on the right side and the incorrect side, I'm actually doing the same exact thing. And that is intentional, because where the incorrectness comes, I don't even know if that's a word, where the incorrectness comes is when you start blending. As you can see in the incorrect side, I'm just blending all the colors together, not really acknowledging where to blend. I'm just going blend crazy, making sure everything looks nice and airbrushed. Well, wrong, it's not nice and airbrushed, it's bad and airbrushed. However, on the correct side, I'm actually only blending where those two different colors intercept. This is how you avoid over blending and smudging. It's actually why the smudge tool has such hate, because there's some beginner artists who just don't know what they're doing and they just start blending like crazy. So now it's kind of a taboo to use the blend tool, but there's actually nothing wrong with using it. You just need to make sure you're not abusing its power and just making everything again look airbrushed. So I'm doing the same thing for the shadow. I'm only doing the inner corner of the shadows. Going back to the smudge tool being a taboo, there's actually other ways to blend. As you can see in this reference, there's not much blending happening with this eye. You're simply giving the illusion that it's blended by adding a mid color. So for example, if you have a light brown and a dark brown right next to each other, just put a nice swab of a mid brown in between to give the illusion that the two are blending, but you're not actually blending, if that makes sense. Going back to the ball, you can see that there's a big difference. I want to make sure you remember this. And that's not it. Proper saturation is really important. And now you can see that I actually have my reference and I blocked down the colors just as I did on the ball. And if you're a little bit confused, I actually went over how to properly block colors in my last video. I also went over proportions, so if you're having that problem as well, you can also go and check that video out after this one. But going on to saturation, certain colors can make the face look very dull and dead. You want to make sure you're adding enough warm colors to your reference, so oranges and yellows and reds, because the base of your painting also really does matter. So as you can see, I'm just adding a lot more color to the face. I'm adding orange where the orange is in the reference. As I previously said in my last video, make sure you always have your reference on deck. I know that it's kind of difficult to see based on the angle of the camera, but I actually do have the reference right next to me the entire time. It's just on my phone, which I actually don't recommend for beginner artists because you're trying to make something small bigger because your phone screen is smaller. So I would actually recommend the other method that I have provided for you guys in my last video. I'm not going to dispose it because you have to check out the other video. Come on, show some support. But it's actually a very useful tip and you will find it to help your journey for proportions and just the overall face in general. But yeah, I'm going to be honest with you guys. In this stage, I was so scared because I felt like compared to the reference, my drawing looked like she just looked dead. I think it was the colors that I was using, not necessarily the colors that I was using, but it's just that I didn't get to the saturation part, which explains why saturation is so important. In my last video, I actually talked about this as well. If you're having problems identifying saturation, try tampering with filters. Sometimes if you higher the saturation in a picture or in an image, it makes certain colors come out and you can better identify what colors you should be using, if that makes sense. Just make sure you're not abusing that power. So another secret is I was oh my gosh, I was struggling so much with this nose. I absolutely love how her nose looks, like in general, the reference, but for some reason I was just struggling and I ended up getting it, and I'm happy I did. But of course you guys get the satisfaction of watching me suffer and struggle to perfect it. Now all I'm doing is just adding more highlights. There's a lot of highlights on the right side of her face, so I'm just being sure to implement that. So perhaps you might be wondering or maybe even panicking about rendering. I promise you it's not as hard as people take it to be. You kind of have to find your niche and what you like to do, but what I find to be super helpful and I'm always gonna recommend is just zooming in, or only focusing, of course, because you can't zoom in traditionally, but restrict yourself to only working on one eye and keep at it for like 30 minutes. So work on an eye for 30 minutes, zoom in on your references, and just zoom in on the eye and only work on the eye. Because if you look at a eye for 30 minutes, you're gonna start to find more things to add. For me, rendering is just adding. That's literally what it means to me, because there's always a little detail that you're gonna forget, and rendering is just detailing. It's quite literally what it is. And once you realize that, you'll start to understand that it's not as intimidating as people perceive it to be. Like, for example, most people, or not most people, but a lot of people will just look at the eyes and say, okay, the eyes are gonna be white. But if you stare at the eyes for long enough, you'll see that the eyeball is far from being white. There's reflection in the eye. Usually the eye has a little bit of a blue hue. Just identifying small things like that. Make sure you have smooth lines. So what I find is that harsh lines and very thick lines can kind of give off a very cartoony look. Even in the eyes where it tends to be a little bit more sharper, everything is still kind of soft in a way. As I've started to actually record my process, I've noticed that I'll just like do something, blend it all out, and then do it again. And I'm like, am I literally going insane? But I realized that I'm just putting down a color and then softening it. That's what I recommend you guys to do. It really helps. The next thing is to detailing or whatever. This is the same thing that I just said earlier, is just zooming in and identifying the colors and everything. Understanding how color reflects really helps with detailing. Understanding that different parts of the skin of your face has different colors. Again, zooming in. It's gonna take a long time. Difference between two people rendering is not that one person is necessarily better, but also who takes the time to really observe and pay attention to the small things. One of the most important things, texture. Texture brings so much life into your painting. Simply adding a little bit of dots where, the highlights hit, creases in the eyes or in the face, just helps so much. This is why a lot of art teachers want their students to draw older people, because there's a lot more into older people than young people with smooth skin. I don't know whether or not you want to do that or not, but that's just what some art teachers do. I'm so mad at myself because I accidentally deleted half of my footage. You guys won't be able to see the other side of the face, but luckily I did get to completely do one side of the face, which can be a demo for you guys. I don't know how you guys are going to take it. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You won't have to see me do the same thing twice. However, on the other side, I actually did the same thing. It's just that side of the face is less illuminated. But as you can see on the eye, I'm just adding the lashes. Anything that I see visually on my reference, I'm adding it. That's another thing to identify when you're doing, the texture in the skin. Just texture in general really just brings livelihood to your painting or whatever you're drawing. That's what you want to identify. Texture, saturation, blending, smooth lines. Shoot, I don't even remember what I said in my own video. Is that it? I don't know, y'all. Y'all let me know in the comments. You guys are the ones that's supposed to be listening, not me. Anyway, I start adding a little bit of light to the eyebrows because she has a little bit of reflected light on there. The footage that I dumbly deleted on accident, the only thing I really did was refine the hair. I did the other side of the face. I altered the background. I made the background a little bit greener, which you'll see in the finished result. I just did little minor touches, but other than that, I did the same thing that I did with the eyeball that you guys clearly got to see. If you're still struggling and you need help with proportions, again, I recommend watching my last video. If you need help with specific features, I have hundreds of TikToks and freaking YouTube shorts that will help you, and I've had many people come to me and tell me that it's helped so much, so I definitely recommend you guys checking that out. If you like this video and if you learned a little bit of something, make sure you subscribe, maybe give me a little like, support a small artist. It's very appreciated. For more art content, make sure you follow me on all platforms, which will be in my outro and also in my description if future me does not forget. Also, if you're wondering how I did the hair, again, I also went over that in my last video, but the premise is the same: identifying your big shapes, blending, adding your small little details, acknowledging values, acknowledging hue, saturation, all that good stuff. And now we come towards the end of the video where I lost my footage. I'm still learning how to do everything, and unfortunately I just had to learn the hard way by losing the biggest file that I had. But it's okay. You guys are learning art, I'm learning how to operate a camera and how to edit, and basically everything that has to do with YouTube. Here, I'm just adding up my finishing touches. Well, it's not even my finishing touches, but it's the finishing touches for this clip because, again, I lost the footage. But yes, don't be shy. Make sure you comment any question that you have. And here's the final result. It turned out so good. Wish you guys could see the entire process. I'm so sorry. Comment a green heart if you made it this far in the video. Make sure you drink enough water, be blessed, and have a nice day.